Good Monday morning to you. Welcome to Morning Brush. I'm Holly Furfer in Atlanta with the look at the headlines this hour. We begin with the unimaginable tragedy in Central Texas. A devastating flash flood over the weekend has now taken at least 82 lives, including 28 children. Rescue workers are still searching for 10 girls and a camp counselor from Camp Mystic, an all-girls camp that was located along the Guadalupe River where the flood took place. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says there were at least 41 people unaccounted for and more could be missing. Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen joins us now from our D.C. newsroom with the latest. And Stephanie, what do we know this morning about this tragedy?
Hey, Holly, good morning. Well, just in the last 30 minutes or so, we've actually heard from Camp Mystic for the first time. That's that all-girls camp in Central Texas that's been a lot of the focus we've heard a lot about over the weekend, with a number of girls still missing from there. I want to read a bit about that camp. They said the camp says they're grieving the loss of 27 campers and counselors following the catastrophic flooding. Our hearts are broken alongside our families that are enduring this unimaginable tragedy. We are praying for them constantly. That statement goes on to say they've been in communication with local and state authorities and who are continuing an extensive search for the missing girls. And they say they are deeply grateful for the outpouring of support from the community, from first responders, and from officials at every level. Again, that's a statement from Camp Mystic, an all-girls camp where a number of campers are still missing this Monday morning, and that's where, the search for the missing is ongoing. But unfortunately, there is still more rain on the way for Texas, and that is certainly a growing concern. We have heard from state officials that over 850 people were rescued in the first 36 hours of this flash flooding that happened over the weekend. There have been stories of 80-year-olds escaping the floods and then going back for their 92-year-old neighbor and waiting it out on top of a shed. So just absolutely tragic situations. Volunteers have been coming in from out of state, and some of those volunteers saying that the damage and devastation that they have seen, comparing it to what they saw in last year's Hurricane Helene that was in North Carolina. Take a listen.
You're going to hear about this for a while. This isn't going to be over. Unfortunately, the body counts, the things that you hear about, they're only going to grow. It's only going to get worse from here, I feel like, because right now, the direct efforts for search and rescue, are kind of, I hear, coming to an end. But now we've got recovery coming.
Hurricane Helene, who he compared this flooding in Texas to. Hurricane Helene caused nearly $60 billion of damage in North Carolina, and that is just one of the states that was impacted. So a lot of focus on Texas this morning, with officials saying that the recovery and the search efforts are ongoing this morning, Holly. And then, unfortunately, as I mentioned, more rain on the way for that region, so it's not over just yet.
Yeah, and Steph, I mean, we know this area is prone to flooding, but did people get enough warning that this severe of flooding was coming? Were they prepared for something like this?
You're right. This is certainly an area that knew they were vulnerable to flooding, and there have been questions and concerns about whether there were enough warning systems in place to give people a chance to escape this weather. We've heard from Kerr County officials. That was one of the counties that was hit really hard by this flooding. Back in 2016, a county official noted that their warning system was antiquated and called it marginal at best. So there have been questions aimed at officials from the county and the city level, asking them what is being done about the warning system. And officials right now say they are aware of the concerns, but they are still focused right now on rescue and recovery efforts first. Take a listen.
We don't want to speculate. At this time, we know there's a lot of speculation and question around it. Again, there's going to be a full review, of this, so we can make sure that we focus on future preparedness. We want to continue to focus on the families at this time, and so we're getting through that. So thank you.
Adding to the confusion, some incorrect flooding alerts have gone out this weekend, but the National Weather Service did indeed put out flash flooding warnings and a flash flooding emergency to really emphasize how quickly people needed to move. But even so, officials and local experts saying that the downpour was more than they anticipated, even with those warnings, and that these regions got the equivalent of 1 month of rain in this single flooding event. Holly, just to kind of give you an idea of how unusual and how quick this downpour and this flooding really got started.
Wow. All right, Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen live for us. Thank you, Steph. All right, Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George joins us now live from Capitol Hill. And Joe, I mean, what are we hearing from the White House in the wake of this tragedy, especially given, people are going to say, hey, Doge cuts, and they cut back, a lot of NOAA, and let's talk FEMA, all of that. So let's start with what their initial response was.
Yeah, and this just remains a gut-wrenching story, right? I mean, it's a tough story to read as journalists, to report on as journalists. It's a tough story to listen to Stephanie's report there. I'm a father, right? I mean, this is gut-wrenching stuff here. But there is some light finger pointing, blaming, questions being asked. And there's really two directions this is going to go. We won't know the answer for several months. This will be chalked up as either a once-in-a-100-year event with minimal changes to what's existing currently in places like Central Texas and around the country, or this will result in significant policy changes. This morning, Punchbowl News first to report that Senator Chuck Schumer has written a letter to the Trump administration asking if the cuts to the National Weather Service played any role here. Now, we should be clear that meteorologists in Texas, the union representing National Weather Service officials, they believe they did their job, that watches and warnings were issued hours and hours before the river reached the critical stage. But again, in politics and policy, it's often called the last mile. Our phones have all buzzed, right, when we're under a tornado warning or a severe warning. But what happens when you're going to a camp and there's no cell phones allowed? No cell service in some areas of the country, right? It's that last mile that's always question marks. And what my colleague Stephanie Liebergen was just alluding to was in 2016, yes, there was discussions about possible sirens like we get around the country when there's tornadoes, but funding for rural governments always remains big issues. Is there a component of this story where Congress comes in with some legislation that provides money to towns to get sirens so that something like this would never happen again? One of the many questions Washington will be asking going forward. This is a well-known, especially Camp Mystic, this is a well-known site in the political community of this country. Former First Lady Laura Bush was a counselor there. Former President Lyndon Baines Johnson's grandchildren, children, family members went there for years and years and years. Multiple members of Congress said they had family at camps in the area of Central Texas at the time of the flooding. So this is a well-known area, although even if this wasn't a connected camp, I think these questions would be asked at the local and state level. As the Texas Tribune reported, state lawmakers in Austin rejected efforts to reform and revise the state's flood detection and warning system in recent months. So local officials, state officials, national officials as well, with some big question marks. President Trump has done what we expect presidents to do during horrible natural disasters like this. An emergency declaration has been declared. He was asked about some of the cuts, if there was any role that the federal government could have done differently. He was asked about this over the weekend. Take a listen to the President of the United States.
Do you think that the federal government needs to hire back any of the meteorologists who were fired in the last few months?
I wouldn't know that. I really wouldn't. I would think not. This was the thing that happened in seconds. Nobody expected it. Nobody saw it. Very talented people are there, and they didn't see it. It's, I guess they said, once in 100 years. They've never seen anything like this. So I wouldn't, I mean, people are trying to blame the school. They're trying to blame the camp. They're trying to blame. It's just a horrible thing. But no, I wouldn't say that, no.
And Holly, there's one more layer of this story that we'll be watching as well, and that is FEMA. Remember, the Trump administration has talked about potentially phasing out FEMA after this hurricane season. Who's on the ground helping people in this moment of crisis? Well, FEMA's on the ground in Central Texas this morning, sheltering north of 100 people, providing assistance. Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem is on the ground as well. This is a pivotal moment for FEMA as they respond to this in the midst of their questions, funding questions long term as well. But overall, again, I think this Monday is still about grieving. It's still about coming to grips with what unfolded in Texas over the holiday weekend. But yes, Holly, some light finger pointing has begun here in our nation's capital.
All right, Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George for us on this Monday morning. Thank you, Joe.